Hello there, it's the Silly Moustache here. Somebody very kindly asked me if I would get all of my guitars out and go through them all and describe why I got them and what I do with them, things like that, which is an enormously large task and would be a very long video. And so what I thought I might try and do is cut it into segments and talk a little bit about my guitars, but also a little bit about myself and why I got into guitars and what guitars I use for what. So I'm going to start in 1966. Before that, and after that in fact, I had been a drummer for many years, playing in R&B groups, soul bands and jazz blues bands and things like that. In 1966 I met a young lady who asked me to take her to a folk festival. Not my sort of thing, long-haired groover that I was, but I took her, and she specifically wanted to see one person, and that person was Tom Rush. And for all my frantically running around London and the outskirts, playing in bands, carting a drum kit around, big amplifiers and all that sort of thing, I suddenly saw one man with one guitar, an Epiphone Texan if memory serves, standing up with one microphone and enchanting lots and lots of beautiful young hippies. And I thought, gosh, what a way to make music. So that was the first thing. In later that year, I think it was, I bought my first guitar. It was a 16-pound guitar, 16 pounds. And I couldn't describe it at all. It was very cheap and cheerful, and I didn't know what I was doing with it. In 1967, the following year, I think, I bought a 32-pound guitar. You see the segments? 16, 32. And in 1969, or 68, I bought a Harmony Sovereign H1265. That's the flashy one with the sunburst and the oversized pick guards and all that sort of thing. And I bought that because I had a friend of mine who had a Harmony Sovereign, and we formed a trio with another guy, obviously, and we were called A Boy and His Dog, and we got quite successful playing around the folk clubs in London. And that went on for a while, and in 1970 I moved out of my parents' house into a flat in West London, and I was playing my harmony in folk clubs and really not doing terribly well, but I was waking up, and I don't know what guitar followed what, but I went through, I can remember one, a Guild D40, which I thought was a lovely guitar, had a cedar top. I took it to a party hoping to pick up some young ladies or something, and a chap, a pop star come busker turned up called Don Partridge, and he pinched my guitar and he played that all night to charm all the women. And so at the end of the evening I didn't have a girlfriend, and I had a very scratched up D40. Around that time, 1972, I guess, I sold my drums, traded them in for, it was said, Mick Jagger's Epiphone Frontier. Right from the start I knew there was something wrong with that Epiphone Frontier. I think someone had the neck off and put it back in a wonky way. It wasn't for me, and it was terribly uncomfortable to play. I went through a Gibson J50 and various other guitars until 1973. Oh, I even had Don Partridge's 50s J200 for a while. I didn't like that either, so that went, and I don't know where it went. I do, but that's another story. In 1973, I got a job in a large American corporate computer firm, and my money doubled, my income doubled the day I joined, and it doubled again within 12 months, and I was in the money. I was living in a cheap flat in a little hovel in West London and making money, and that's when I got my first Martin. a guitar that I'd been yearning for a long time. Don't know what it was. I don't think I knew the difference between a D18 and a D28 at that time. I also shared that flat various times, in one particular time with a chap called, also called Andy, who introduced me to country rock and bluegrass, and I'm eternally grateful to him. In 1975, I moved, my job changed, but I was with the same company. I moved up to Hertfordshire, and I found myself, I was very hard up because I was paying a mortgage for the first time, but I found myself in a bluegrass band, and they wanted me to play mandolin and dobro more than guitar. But I had to sell everything at one time and then managed to restock as my salary finally caught up with my debts. And I found myself playing in 2 bluegrass bands, playing guitar, mandolin and dobro, which was great. 1977, my mother became very ill and finally died, and it was a very difficult year, and that covered everything, you know. So there we are. 1978, I got back into playing into the bands and also a duo with a gent that was buying and selling guitars even more than me, and he turned up with a Martin D35, a 1973 Martin D35 that that I'd seen before. I'd seen the fiddle player in a band that I'd worked with for a short time, and there was something special about that D35. I just bought myself a brand new D28, and well, long story short, we did a swap, and I kept that 1973 D35 for a long time, which will come out later in the story. 1979, I moved again, company moved down to Portsmouth. That's where I was working on the south coast of England, and it was a pretty difficult year, and my father was starting to show signs of dementia, but I didn't know how to diagnose it or what it was all about at the time. But I came down here, and I was living in a hotel for a year, but I stumbled on a bluegrass band and got involved with them, brought my gear down, and we started playing. And then in 1980, I bought my house, and I met my wife, or I met my wife, and I bought my house, probably. And by 1981, it was obvious that my father couldn't cope anymore, and I had to bring him down and put him in a flat, and I was caring for him, trying to cope with a new career that I wasn't enjoying, and it was a little bit messy for a few years. In 1983, I was struck down with a very strange disease, which effectively paralysed me, enormous amounts of pain, was still trying to care for my father, and still trying to do my job. I went back far too soon. So there wasn't much music around, and in 1985 my father died, and there was no music in my life then because I'd got out of the habit. The D35, Mando and Dobro were in the attic, but I got interested in photography, and photography was something I could go and do by myself in my own time, take my own time, without having to appear or anything like that, but I turned it into my art, my expressive art form. So in 1993, 10 years later, I saw a guitar in a shop window that intrigued me. It was called a Dion, and it was a Dion Legacy L999. Well, I decided to talk to Jane about it, and I went back to buy it, and not only the guitar gone, but the shop had gone. I searched for one, and it actually found one, and I also got my D35 and my Mando and Dobro down from the attic, and they were in perfectly good condition. I formed a duo and bought myself a pair of Lakewood guitars, German-made guitars. Firstly, I saw the 12-string, which looked wonderful. Then I bought a 6-string to go with it. And then the duo became a trio with a dobro and mandolin player, and we were really quite successful. And I decided I wanted a matched pair of guitars, and so I opted for a Martin J1240. Again, the 12-string came first, and a J40. To justify that, I had to sell my beloved Martin D35, which I did to a friend. Instantly regretted it. The J40 didn't fit me at all, but I was doing a solo gig in about 1997 with a lovely chap called Isaac Guillory, who showed me his Martin D35S. S, I know I have no sibilants, S for sugar or standard, D35, S for standard, and it was a 12 fret dreadnought with a 1 7/8 nut width slotted headstock, and it suited me to a T. So I started a search for that guitar. Along the way I bought a Bourgeois DS260, which was a small dread, slightly smaller than usual dread. Again, it was a 12 fret slotted headstock, looked beautiful, sounded wonderful, but again 1 3/4 neck, and it was really too thin for me to do the sort of things that my fingers had started to do. And so I kept looking around. In 1998, it was my 50th birthday, and my dear wife had a guitar built for me. It was a 00, which was my request, with a 1 7/8 neck, like the D35S, but smaller, because I was thinking about other things rather than bluegrass, and I was thinking about, well, I was writing songs and stuff like that then, and so she bought me that. Later in 1998, we went to the States, and we stayed with friends in New Hampshire and around that area. We explored that area a little bit, and I went to the Guitar Emporium in Lexington, looking around for a 12 fret guitar, specifically a Martin 12 fret dreadnought, and they showed me a Collings, never heard of it, Collings, something like a DS, which would have been the 12 fret dreadnought, and it had lots and lots of abalone on it, a 41 or a 42 in Brazilian rosewood and Adirondack. The price was going, as he talked to me, trying to get me to buy this, and I was very, very tempted, but I was scared. I could have afforded it as well. I was scared about bringing Brazilian rosewood, trying to bring it back into the UK, even then, 1998, so I didn't buy it. What a shame. But in 1999, I went to a shop in East London. A chap there called Seamus Brady asked me what I was looking for. He made a careful note, phoned me a little while later, and had assembled a number of guitars, including a Martin, a Santa Cruz, told me to take along my Bourgeois. And here he had a Collings DS2H, Sitka and East Indian, but still, in my eyes and in my hands, far superior to all the other guitars, and so I came home with it. And this is the start of my 12 fret wide neck journey, really. So that's about 15 minutes, and I'm going to stop there, and we'll do part 2 in a little while. So if you have been, thanks for watching.